Relationships don't stand still, not when they involve living people. They involve trust and commitment, and that changes how we act towards each other, and those actions create a history, which in turn changes the relationship, for better or for worse. So it goes on. True of all our relationships, including our relationship with God. As James points out in chapter 2 of his letter, faith without deeds is dead. So if you see the right actions, can you assume that all is well with the relationship? It's going from strength to strength. Well, no, not necessarily. People can act in genuine obedience to God and perform miracles even, move mountains by their faith. But now you have a history. And the key question is going to be, how will that history be told? Both by the people themselves, and how will it be told by others? Will it be boasting or praise? Will the person who acted in faith look back at their actions and say, look what I did. What a truly marvellous believer I must be. Or will they say, I trusted God and look what he did with me. See, both are possible responses, but with one the relationship slides back and with the other it goes forward. In fact, the more outstanding the actions, the greater the temptation there is to turn from praise to boasting. Just think what Peter had to learn in this area. All the way from, go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man, to, if you love me, feed my sheep. And Jesus keeps having to hit the reset button with Peter, doesn't he? So that the relationship can continue on the right foundation, which is God's grace. Now, Peter wasn't doing wrong stuff at all, but he was misinterpreting the resulting history, making it more about him than about Jesus. James in his letter and Paul in chapter 4 of his letter to the Romans take up the history of Abraham. His story was often being told in such a way that it was pretty much all about Abraham. His actions were a credit to him and therefore to his descendants. The thing to do then is pretty much be like Abraham. And if you can't be, well, tough. Paul's point is that Abraham's history can't rightly be told that way. If, in fact, Abraham was justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. We need to get this one right. There really should be an output of some kind from our faith, or else it's dead. But this isn't so we can big ourselves up. The big achiever in this relationship is God, who justifies the wicked, not me who helps him out. Abraham didn't misinterpret his own history this way, which meant that as God told him what to do, he was still ready to obey, still trusting. If we get distracted into believing that we're such wonderful people, we'll miss the point about our wonderful God. And we won't be ready for the next step, because that depends on faith as well. Perhaps more seriously, there are serious implications for others. Paul points out that Abraham's story, rightly told, opens the way for all people from all nations to put their trust in Jesus. But of course, if you tell that story with Abraham at the centre, the door closes for all who can't prove that they've inherited his genes. So, do people have to be like us to become Christian? Why? What has my Duncan rightness got to do with the fact that God has saved me? No. Real faith doesn't get distracted by any other kind of faith or hope. It believes, and as we believe, we become. It isn't at all afraid to face the facts head on, but it never wavers in its trust because it draws its energy from God, and not from any myths and legends that we might tell about ourselves. If you have been, thank you for listening.